All right, let's get started. So thank you guys so much for showing up today. I like where I'm seeing you guys are from. So we got people from Canada, Florida. I think Hannah, if you're still in Nashville, that's cool. Washington, yeah, all over the place. So that's amazing. So just to preface this, these workshops were initially meant to prepare student designers for our upcoming design-a-thon, but we decided to really open it up to everyone else because having a comprehensive presentation is sometimes just hard to come by. So with that, we can also introduce our organization. So SD Creative Lab is putting on this event. We're a group of students who strive to empower and build an inclusive design community at UC Santa Barbara by providing opportunities, resources for other student designers. And for us, we're the only active design organization on campus. But yeah, and then a few Zoom etiquette rules to go over. Make sure you guys are on mute. Turn on your camera if you are able to, and let me make sure to turn off the music for now, because yeah, and yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Mackenzie will get to them at the end or leave them to answer in the Q&A section of this workshop. So with that, we do have a lot to cover. So Mackenzie, I'll let you introduce yourself and you can take it away.
That's good. How's everyone doing? You can unmute yourself now.
Amazing.
Super awesome.
Great.
Very excited.
That's great. That's great. I'm very excited too. So like on the chat, like feel free to spam the chat like the way you want. I'm really excited to like I guess see what you got. Like just a question, like can anyone just like spam their location on the chat? I'm just very curious to see where everyone's from. You got Vancouver, you got San Jose, okay, you got Toronto, okay, Seattle, Toronto, India, San Diego, North Bay. Yo, there's a lot of okay. It's kind of okay. So I'm actually from Toronto, so I guess represent the six. Oh, Philippines. Oh, that's so cool. Malaysia. Okay, that's great. So we got people from like all crowds. Is like everyone here students, or do we have any like professionals? So feel free to like just if you're a student, just like drop your school there on the chat. CSD, got Waterloo, UCSB. Yeah, I guess the club, I guess it's UCSB club. So, oh, UCLA alum. No, that's great. Any Hopkins, Toronto things, yeah. Front-end developer, great. Is there any like professionals, like anyone who has maybe like 2+ years in the design industry? Just trying to see if I should, I guess, level up the caliber of the presentation just in case. Okay, exec MBA. Okay, Nate. I'll level up the calibers for you. Okay, great. So now let's get started. So so can everyone see my screen and hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I guess welcome to like the workshop. So I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Mackenzie, and currently I'm I'm a startup founder. I co-founded NodeApp. NodeApp, what it is that currently like it mainly operates in Canada, but what we do is that we're basically like a platform that connect brands with content creators and influencers. And basically what we do is that, let's say you have an e-commerce brand and you're looking for content creators or influencers to generate content for you and get brand awareness. You can basically use our app, create your brief, and all you need to give in exchange is free product to the creator. And in exchange, you basically get content. So if you happen to be a content creator, it's basically like an app with just free product that you can get. And if you're a brand, it's basically an app that allows you to get brand awareness on social media and great and very high quality content. So that's for that. So that's I guess my like I had to promote this, but so in terms of my design journey, so I'll start. So I went to University of Waterloo, and I actually started in accounting and finance when I started university back in 2015. My goal was actually to become an investment banker. And for my first internship, I worked as a business analyst at BlackBerry when I guess when it was cool, when they were doing fine. And then when I was there, I didn't like the work that I was doing there. I didn't like what business degree would offer me. So then I decided to just leave the program. And most of my friends in Waterloo, they were all in like computer science and engineering, and they were all working on their like side projects and hackathons. And then that's when I kind of decided that like I wanted to like hack with them and like do projects with them. And then that's how I found design. And then from there, I just started learning self-learning design, like just being in my dorm room, just like, I guess, hustling it through, trying to get like my first few internships. And like back when I started, design was not as hyped as it is today. Back then, I was actually focusing more on the research aspect of things, because for me, like I saw it more as like a tool for like entrepreneurship and do startups. So for me, I was like, oh, like I want to be able to become like an idea generator where I can take like a problem and just like break it down and like basically found like solutions out of it. And then to be honest, like from there, like that led to like I started initially like in service design. That's basically using the design process for the sake of designing services, and I'm going to walk through the entire design process for this presentation. So it's great. And after that, I got my first official UX internship. And then after that, I led to startup. And then I also worked at Google on the G Suite team. And then right now I'm currently working full time on my startup, just leading product, leading design. So I've been having a great time just doing that. So right now I'll just like get started. So that was me for my like first internship. It was my first job. I was super happy. These were some of my coworkers. You know, like when you get your first design internship, like you're usually like super happy, you're super hyped to get started. But the thing is that like when I got my internship on my first day, my manager actually presented me with this prompt: design a platform that will allow network operators to manage various licenses of ISPs. And I look at this and I was like, and what kind of hell did I get into? Like I was so scared. That was literally me. I was like, yo, like I don't know what I'm doing here. And imposter syndrome started kicking in. And I was like, yo, like what is a network operator? Like what is that? Right. And like licenses for what? ISP? Like is there like what is an ISP? And by the way, like what does the company even do? Like I kind of don't know. Um and then you know like overwhelmment, stress. And then I would go home feeling exactly like this. But like you see, this man is like lying down on a couch. I didn't even have a couch. I was way too broke to have a couch. um, so yeah, and a lot of the time, like you as a designer, you would be given problems. And to be honest, most of the time, like you're not hired to have a solution right off the bat. You're hired to go through a process to eventually find a solution. And for this presentation, my goal is actually to give you a process that will actually allow you to whatever problem you get through, like someone gives you, you'll be able to act like at least break it down and understand it to the point where you're going to like looking like this guy to someone like this, you know, like you're like you just got it, you know, like you know you're going to solve it. So now let's just get started. That's kind of like the framework that I really like to present when I talk about design. And like for the designathon that you're going to be doing, it's going to be very useful. So usually the way you would go about solving a design problem is that they would give you the prompt, and then after that, you would do a research, and then from there you would take all of the data from that research, sanitize it using various tools. You probably heard of like customer journey mapping, what are the personas and all of these other tools. And then from there you end up like designing. And then from there you end up designing and then having like mock-ups and prototype. But then for this presentation, I'm mainly going to focus on that part, because that's the part that most people get wrong. And if you get that part wrong, the rest of the project is not going to be as strong. And the reason why is because like if you don't take the time to like understand the problem and understand what you're trying to build, you might make some very pretty mock-up, but they're just going to be pretty mock-up, right? It's not going to be something that is like really thought through. It's something that like will actually convey something to your user and solves their problem and their need. So I broke down my like the process into four steps. So at the beginning, literally just break down the problem, break down the ask, break down the request, then identify what are the knowns and unknowns about what you're trying to solve, and then structure your process. And I'm going to walk you through how to actually do that, and then collect and synthesize the data. Um, and if you look at that process, it's like you at the beginning, you're literally just thinking and discussing with your team. Or I guess if you're alone, you're just thinking and probably just writing stuff down like sticky notes and putting them on your wall. Then after that, you're planning and executing. And that's where things usually diverge. And that's where you get to actually put your own spin and your own like problem solving process to it. So let's get started with the breakdown, the ask. So the prompt that I'm going to mainly be using for to like talk about this process is design an experience for students, professors, and members of the school community to reserve space at the library. And you know what? I'll actually even put that in the chat so that you all have it. Okay, great. So that's basically like the framework that I literally use for like every time I feel overwhelmed. So basically the way to break down a problem, especially that prompt specifically. So at the beginning, you need to ask yourself like, what are they asking me to do? So then the goal. So if you think about at a more meta level of like what that is, it's really like, what is the goal that I'm trying to create from this solution? Like, what are they asking from me? Like, what is the desired output and outcome? And to be honest, for that one, you would literally just like go through the prompt and highlight the things that are asking you just so that you're well situated. Then after that, it's really about the audience. So it's like, who am I trying to change the life of? Who are the people that I'm trying to affect? Oh yeah, and by the way, like that framework works if you work with enterprise software, service design. It's a very versatile and broad framework. So feel free to use it for anything. And then location. So it's like, where's this problem experienced? What part of the world am I trying to impact with this solution, with a potential solution? And then the impact. It's like, what does the state of the world matters? Like why, like what am I trying to move the needle of? And what does it even matter? Why am I doing what I'm about to be doing? I'm going to spend a lot of time doing that. So like, why should I do it? And then the request. So basically, what's a deliverable? Where is my solution going to live in? If let's say I'm consulting a client, do they want a deck? Do they want a prototype? Do they want a fully fledged UI? Like what do they want? And then the last one is when. So it's really like when is that going to be deployed? Because if you think about it, design is kind of this very weird discipline where you're trying to design something for the future, analyzing data from the past to give you insights on the present, which is kind of messed up if you think about it, because you might be like, let's say I give you the problem, like improve the sense of belonging in Toronto, right? You might do research from the past 10 years to understand today, but then the solution is going to be deployed in 10 years. And that will require a different set of tools. That's why considering time is very important. So in terms of the point that I gave you, so if you look at the goal is literally what is stated: an experience to reserve work desks, spaces in the library. It's simple. Like you don't even need to overthink it. It's a given. The audience, they're also giving it to you. So easy. It's students, professors, and members of the school community. Oh my God. It's not hard. So then you see, it's pretty simple if you think about it. And like location, and that's when things get a little messy, right? Location, the only thing that they're giving you is work desk spaces and in the library, which is like, but then like that's kind of broad because there's a lot of libraries in the world. And what type of library is that? Is it like municipal libraries? Is it national libraries? Is it school libraries? Is it like, so then for the sake of scoping, I just narrow it down to UCSB's UCSB's library, just because it gives a better frame, right? And the thing too is that you're not like, sometimes the prompt might be like increase conversion, and it's like, okay, but how do I do that? But the thing is that if you break it out with the exact same framework, you'll realize that you have a lot of unknowns, and your goal is actually to go figure that out. So then if you look at the impact for that problem, it's like, what are the unknown? So that the unknown is, oh, so impact, it's unknown, right? Because they're not telling me what problem I'm trying to solve and why am I even doing this. The assumption might be to prevent the spread of COVID because people are going back to school. I'm actually not sure, right? But that's also something that we're going to figure that out after. And then the request, I'll just assume that it's a web app. And then the time, let's just say that it's a design challenge. So I just have 7 days, and all they're asking me to do is a deck presenting the solution, for example. And then now you feel good. You went from this very complicated problem, and right now like you kind of feel confident. So like at the beginning, you were like laying down on your couch or your bed crying, and right now you're Beyonce. And then now that you have that, now you need to identify all of your unknowns. I mean your knowns and unknowns. And so basically the step is, I would say, one of the most important one, because the step allows you to revisit the notions that you forgot because you were stressed and overwhelmed. It allows you to ask stupid questions. Like literally during that internship where I was solving that ISP problem, I went to my marketing manager and I was like, what does the company do? I don't get it. And then he sat me down and then he told me what the company was doing. And then so that's where you can ask your stupid questions. And then after that, and then also at the same time, it allows you to understand like at what level of depth you need to go in order to solve this problem. And but the thing is that the most important aspect of that is also to build a framework to understand how you're going to tackle this problem. And I'll teach you how to do that. So take a sheet of paper, split into what I know, what I don't know. And I really like that exercise, to be honest, for most of the problem that I tackle. And the reason why is because sometimes when you start, you're like, oh, like I don't know what to do. So then you just like brain dump everything that you know. And a lot of the time you've actually done that exercise with the hexagon. So then you can just import that. And then you just add more things. And then you also have like what you don't know. So then to be honest, for there, I would be like, am I going to get fired because like I don't know what the company does? Like all of my questions, all of my ambiguities, everything that I thought was very subjective. And to be honest, when you do the exercise, you'll always end up in like feeling either two ways. So the first one is either like you do the exercise and you're like, wait a minute, like I'm actually not that dumb. Like I know a lot of stuff about this thing, right? So then you feel good about yourself. And then the second scenario you might be feeling like is, oh, there's a lot of things that I don't know. Now I can just go out there and ask my questions. And now it's like more structured because I know what I'm looking for because I've noted everything here. And for the prompt that I gave you, some of the unknowns was that like I don't know, like they're telling me to do like to develop that experience. But to be honest, I don't know what is the problem that they're trying to solve here. Like I don't know what I'm trying to solve here. They didn't give me anything to solve. So it makes it hard for me to come up with a solution. Then right now, like I also don't know what's the current process by which rooms get booked currently. So it kind of makes it hard because like I don't know how to go about building an experience if I don't know what the current experience is. And to be honest, if you look at all of these questions, you can actually map all of them out to the framework, to the hexagon framework that I showed you. So it's very like transportable. But yeah, you also have like what are the micro logistics and the hedge cases, because like that experience should, it seems that it's going to be kind of complex. And then how will this experience differ from different stakeholders, because they're asking me to do things for students, professors, and members of the school committee. Like that's a lot of people to deal with. And yeah, so and to be honest, like you like in terms of so right now we talked about break down the problem and we talked about identifying the knowns and unknowns. And to be honest, depending on the type of problem that you tackle, the length of just these two steps might vary. So like for example, for my project with the ISPs, literally after mapping my unknowns, I was like, yo, I don't know how computer networks work, and I don't know anything about how the internet works. So I literally spent like, I think like it was like an entire week understanding how computer networks work, because I had no clue about what the company did. And if I wanted to understand what the company did, I need to understand how internet works. And it took me like a week just to figure it out. If you were to tackle the problem like how might we end homelessness in California, this two-step of the process might actually take you a month. And the reason why is because like there's a lot of like systems involved in solving a problem like that. And you might need different people from different disciplines. So then just to figure out your unknown might require a facilitation, might require to, you might require a research just to understand what you don't know, because you might not know what you don't know. And then for like a product design, I don't know, like might take you, depending on your project, might take you a couple of days, like 3 days. If you do design sprint, 3 4 days, like it might be very quick from time to time. But that's basically with the different types of problem if you were like wondering. But it can be very simple in the same way that it can go very in depth, and it can get very complex. So now how do you structure your process? So that's the part that is usually where solution kind of diverges. When you break down the problem and you identify your known and unknowns, usually most people are gonna end up with the same thing, because you're literally just taking what you're being given. But when it's there, that's when like the creative problem solving comes in. So for example, if you go here, for example, like you have all of your knowns and unknowns. So basically the goal right now, when you have all of that, is basically to take all of the questions that you have, all of your stressors and all of your ambiguities, and translate that into design tools and research methods that will allow you to solve the problem. And here, I didn't even see UX research, right? I like what you need to do is you need to think about, okay, now I got all of these unknowns. Okay, so what do I actually need? Solve it and then cover all of that, right? Um, and there's a lot of tools and methods that you can use to uncover all of that. So and there's so many tools, and you've probably seen a lot of them. And to be honest, if you look at it, like it actually kind of looks kind of overwhelming. Like there's like 5 why service blueprint, how might we user story. There's just so many tools out there for you to accomplish one thing. But because I'm trying to be very practical right now, I'm only going to focus on three. And these threes are like very practical. These are like tools that I use like most of the time. So like affinity mapping, customer journeys, and like value creation canvas. So what's an affinity mapping? So affinity maps, the way you use it is that you would literally just use it for so what you would do is that you would, for example, like you would like do a survey, collect data, and what you would do is that you would basically categorize every pieces of insights into different categories, and then from there you'll get an overview on like what are people feeling and what are the patterns with regard to the answers. So for example, here the what is design and experience for individuals to reserve work desks, right? But the thing is that my unknown was that I don't know what problem should I focus on when I'm going to solve this, right? Because it's just an ask, right? But it's like, okay, but what problem does that solve, right? So literally the way I would go about it is I would actually create a survey and I would ask, name 3 issues you encountered in the past when you try to book a space at a library. For that, I would send that to, I don't know, let's say 30 students, and then think about it, 30 students times 3, that's 90 data points. So what you can do is you can take all of these answers and you can like put them on sticky notes and you can categorize them. And that would actually allow you to see what are the answers that are most frequent and to see what problems like actually matter. So that's the way you could go about it. So that's for affinity mapping. Then you have customer journey mapping. Customer journey mapping, it's basically like it's basically a tool that allows you to basically map the journey of your users or customers, and then from there understand where how do they feel about the different, I was going to say touch point, but how do they feel about the different steps that they're going through to accomplish what they're trying to do, to accomplish what they're trying to achieve. Yes. And then the way you could go about it is you can interview 10, 20 people, and then you ask them like, oh, what is the current process by which you go to book rooms at the library? And then once you have all of these steps, so then you gather a simple sets of different steps. So then you can actually go and map these steps and like find, I guess, the best combination. And then from there, you basically ask them like, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you find these different steps? And you can use a different cohort of people, or you can use the same cohort of people. It's really like, you're the designer, you're the boss, like you decide. And then there's also the value proposition canvas. I really like this one. That's one of my personal favorite, to be honest. And because the thing is that it's very easy to use that framework. And oh yeah, and like if you want to know more about this one, like you can just Google it. There's like so much information and there's so much variant on that framework that it's very easy for you to like use that to analyze different types of stakeholders. So for example, the problem they ask you about students, professors, and members of the community. And like that framework works really well in terms of like understanding what's their job to be done, what are their pains and gains. And then from there, it's very easy to like go to like other people and be like, yo, that's how the different stakeholders differentiate from each other. So and then it also allows you to think about solution right at the bat. And then a lot of the time, what people will do is that they would actually use that framework and use that to create personas. So you can take that and create personas that you can go and present to other people. So it's a very versatile framework, and that's why I really like it. Once you have that, like once you've have everything planned, that's when you can actually go on in the wild and like collect data and synthesize your data. But synthesize kind of seems like this really fancy word. To be honest, it just means like make sense of the data. I use synthesize because it just makes me look smarter. But so basically what you have here, so for example, here you have the first unknown. So like problem, what problem should I focus on when I'm going to design for the request? So as I said, survey mapping and affinity mapping. What is the current process, interview and customer journey? How might we take precautions with regard to COVID? And like the safety rules, like, I don't know, Googling, like for real, like Google is a very great tool. And then when it comes to edge cases and micro logistics, I can use scenario planning. That's like, if you have questions about that, we can talk about that later. But like scenario planning is basically a way where you can map different scenarios with regard to the different cases that the user will go through. But that's what I would use. And then you can also have, how does the experience differ from different stakeholders, well, developers in Canva. So once you have that, like the only thing that you have now is just to execute. That's the cool part, where like you have everything planned. Like now it's just very easy to just go on in the wild and be like, oh, I know what question I'm going to ask, and I know why I'm going to ask that question. And the best of all is like, when I get that answer to that question, I know exactly what I'm going to do with it. And I know exactly how that's going to fit into the next step of the process. So everything just works like a story, where at the beginning you were like lost in the wild, you were crying in your couch, and at the end you're like, oh, like I know exactly how I'm going to solve that problem, like I'm a beast. And then at the end, it's like when you execute, like the thing that you shouldn't neglect, and the thing that you should be really like very intentional about is you should define success. So you should identify, like, now that I'm executing, like what is the word that I'm trying to create now, like, and how do I define it? Because now that I understand why the problem like matters, like now I can actually go on and be like, okay, so like now that I have all of this insight, what is the world I'm trying to create now? Like, what is the world I'm trying to designing now? And that's when things just like unfolds, and when things just literally just become magical from there. And then after that, that's just, I guess, my quote, but like design is not about like research, visuals, or prototype. It's literally just a problem solving behind all of these different aspects. It's very just, it's pretty much a problem solving mindset. And that's why you need to very internalize. Like, I didn't mention research, but literally what I showed you here is the UX research process. But like if you go back into it, it's literally just problem solving. And then here, so like that's the just reminding you of the first step approach. And then and that's the Q&A. So that was the first part. For the second part, I will actually show you like a real world case study of like a project that didn't go too well, and a project, and at the same time something that went well, and also explaining how problem framing is actually, it's problem framing is usually what should bring you to a good path or a wrong path, depending on how you frame it. But I'm gonna talk about that later. But does anyone have any question?